Good to be with you guys today. I am Gina Herald. I have the privilege of serving as the regional director for what I think is now called the Southeast, just as an all-encompassing sort of thing, the Southeast and Florida. So from the Carolinas to Key West and everything in between.
That's
so great to be with you.
Large territory. All right,
Indeed.
so we're doing these things, and I don't know, I assume everyone is familiar with this term, urban legend or urban myth, but here's our definition straight out of Webster, and that is a story about an unusual event or occurrence that many people believe is true, but that is not true. And so that is kind of the basis of what we're talking about, stuff that happens in BNI. We've heard, Gina, over the years, some crazy stories about things that people are sure are actual written BNI policy, and they are not. So let's go through a few and see how we do.
All right.
All right, let's start.
Sometimes people will say, hey, where is that in the policy brochure about whatever? And I'm like, it's not there.
And there's a reason.
Okay.
So let's start with this one. The vice president is only a tiebreaker. So when it comes to voting, they only call him in, hey, we're in a deadlock. I see this all the time.
Yeah, well, and you and I were talking about this earlier too, Steve. Sometimes the vice president will say, well, I'm only the tiebreaker, but the truth of the matter is, to bust this myth, that we have an even number of participants on the membership committee so that the VP makes an odd number overall so that no decision will end in a deadlock. Not so that the VP will only vote if we have a deadlock. They are actually a participating, part of the membership committee, the chairperson, any participant. So,
yeah, we always say like they're the chairperson for the membership committee, but they're also on the membership committee. They are a voting member, so they can vote first or last. Their vote has no more weight or to anyone else on the committee. It's just one more vote of the 5.
Exactly. So.
Right. So Bruce says that was not the case with BNI DVR before joining the Corps. All right. So that is possible. That's kind of went in a regional way at some point, and we have been talking about this now for several years. And even though we train it every year, it still comes up. So it's kind of like a legacy myth that just kind of hangs around.
Well, and Steve, it was funny because when you and I first started talking about this and we were talking about the title and you had said debunking BNI myths, and I was like, let's make it really provocative. And Steve said, but an urban myth is something that's like really scary. And I said, well, some of the things that are going to come up here are pretty scary. No, I'm kidding. But you know what I mean? It's amazing how they take on a life of their own and all of a sudden it's like a legend in BNI.
Yeah.
All right.
So I know a few people are saying things like these have been, like me saying, this has been a misunderstanding in certain areas. And really, that's all it is. It's not the end of the world, of course, but it does kind of make a difference because you really want the VP involved in all the decision making, right? All right.
Excellent.
All right. Ready for another one? Here comes number 2. The power of one is used as a ranking tool.
A ranking tool.
You have been ranked.
Yes. Slacker member. No, so here's the thing, right? When the power of one, some of you guys have heard us talk about this before. There's 2 kinds of goals. Outcome goals, or in BNI's case, profitability goals, right? I want to do $100,000 based on my BNI participation this year. And there's performance goals. So what BNI realized is that there are 5 KPIs, key performance indicators, that lead to the outcome that our members want, which is more money to their top line revenue. And we know that those activities are these 5 things that are measured on the power of one. So really what the power of one is your personal scoreboard. It lets you know where you are in the game. Am I engaged? Am I doing the things I need to do every week that are going to lead to the outcomes that I want, which is more money to my business? So I think sometimes it has to do with how it's introduced into the chapter and how we celebrate the members who are being successful. And recognition is a core value. We want to celebrate it, but it's not a shaming tool. It's not a ranking tool. I mean, shaming doesn't work. Celebrating works. And the people at the bottom probably feel bad enough about, and maybe they're going through a particular, ebb or flow in their business, and it's just been a rough 6 months for them. Data does not define us, it informs us. And I love that about it. And Steve, I know you have some thoughts about this too, so please share.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, this is, first off, this is only a 6-month snapshot of your participation. And everybody has ups and downs over the course of their membership. I was a member for 15 years. I was not steady all 15 years. Things come up, right? My business changed, all these other, you have personal things that come up in your family. And so sometimes taking a look at where you are in terms of your participation is only going to kind of give you a little bit of a reality check to say, all right, now it's time to get back in the game here because I dipped a little bit over where I used to be. And so to me, anybody, if you're in gray, which is not easy, by the way, I think you got to work to be in gray. But if you're in gray and you move to red, that's progress, right? And just keep doing a little bit more till you get to where you need to be. But in the end, this is really all about, first off, making sure that you're reporting. I know that there are good members out there who are participating on a regular basis, but aren't necessarily entering all their participation in the app or on BNI Connect. And so they're showing a lower number where really they should be a lot higher. That is a great, by the way, education moment to make sure that everybody on a regular basis is entering their participation.
Yeah, so that it matters, right? It's their level of engagement. Where are they in terms of where they want to be with what they're trying to accomplish using the BNI system, right? And these are the core elements of the system. So it's not a club to beat people up with. It's a tool to help people measure their performance against their profitability goals. So
absolutely. And if your goal is to be, by the way, look at this particular, I'm kind of fascinated by this one. Here's a chapter that is exclusively yellow or green, which is great. That means they're doing more than half on average of the things that we asked to do. But look to the right and look at the visitors. If I'm in a chapter this good, that is doing this well, I want to be inviting up a storm to say, look at, this is such an easy invite. We have people who are regularly giving referrals like crazy. This looks like a pretty good meeting. We just need to invite more people.
Yeah. Hey, Craig's got a great question in the chat or in the Q&A, Steve, related to this. Why isn't closed business included in the Power of One? Craig, what a fantastic question. We would love to tell you why, and here's why. These activities in the Power of One are activities that you can control. You can control attending the meeting, bringing a visitor, giving a referral, your CEUs. You can't control closed business. However, what we know is that the outcome will take care of itself when the performance is executed consistently and, with excellence. So yes, sometimes, your favorite team's going to lose the game, but that doesn't mean that they didn't execute the fundamentals successfully. The other team did it a little better, but closed business is not something we can control. But we can control these activities. So that's the primary reason. I invite you to check out Tim Roberts' video on BNI Business Builder on this about the Power of One. 17 minutes, tons of great information that will really help you understand the elements of this tool and how to help your chapter members embrace it as a path to, measuring their performance against their profitability.
Yeah, when people ask me that question, and it's a valid question, I always say, exactly what Gina says, and I usually say this as well. Let's say you have someone 1 week in your chapter says, I'm a real estate agent and I'm looking to sell a house to your sister-in-law or something like that, right? Okay, so that's a referral and the referral closes and that referral was worth, I don't know, in commission, what, $30,000 or something, right? Okay, and that same week, another person hears the acupuncturist saying, I'm looking for a pregnant woman who has some back pain, and I want her to come in. and let me take care of it. So that is a referral that's given, right? And that referral is worth $100. Okay, so you can't compare apples to apples, the value of the referral, but what you've done is you gave the actual referral that someone was looking for, and that closed. And so the referral is what we're counting, but not the dollar amount, if that makes sense, right?
Exactly. So do we want to keep going with the questions in the chat related to this topic, Steve?
Let's keep going, and then we'll go
Okay.
back
And then
to
we'll come
some
back.
more.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got
Okay.
Q&A as well. Oh boy. Do not speak. Yeah, so this is a tough one, and this is a controversial one. Because first off, the one thing, even though I am a proponent of limiting the amount of freedom we give for people who are just showing up, especially if they're repeat visitors, for me, I don't want someone to walk into the room if we're doing an in-person meeting or come on our Zoom meeting and start with, here's what you can't do, right? I want to invite people and welcome them and make them feel comfortable. But Gina, why don't you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I mean, the old conventional wisdom was that if the substitute was representing Steve and his business, they're there to represent him, and we wouldn't allow them to speak about their own business because they're there representing the member. And I think some of the conventional wisdom behind that too was then they'll come back next week as a visitor to promote themselves, right? But in the spirit of creating an insanely great experience for everyone who attends the meeting, there is no policy about substitutes not being able to speak. We want people to be able to promote their business, even if their competitor is in the room, who already has the seat. If they're worried about somebody taking a piece of business away from them off of a 30-second presentation from someone no one in the chapter knows, that's probably a credibility issue. On the other hand, too, is that you never know where the conversation is going to go. Now, the reason, and Steve and I talked about this earlier, the reason that we do put boundaries on the substitute situation is because when substitutes become what we call professional subs, right? Or they're showing up on a consistent basis, or they're representing somebody different in the chapter every week, we don't want to allow them to have for free the opportunity to promote their business every week, the privilege for which you have paid as members. So that is more of a membership committee coaching, visitor host coaching piece to let the substitute know that, we appreciate you subbing for XYZ person, but just so that you know, going forward when you attend, we're going to request that you not promote your business because that's reserved for the privilege of our members, or something such as that, right? So it requires some finesse. The most important thing is to not make people feel uncomfortable when they come, to the meetings. And so there's a real delicate balance there. It takes finesse.
All right, we have opened up the can of worms now. So
Yes.
David says, so they can speak about their business instead of the member's business? No, definitely not. They're still representing the member as a substitute, but there are times when the president will allow them to talk about their own business since they are in the room as technically a substitute or a visitor. Right? And then Cheryl says, is a permanent sub still allowed? No, I'm going to say no. Permanent sub, professional sub, these are words that substitutes have made up themselves, by the way. We have no language on this in BNI. However, the best thing that you can do is invite fresh faces every time as best you can as your substitute, because you never know who's going to be a customer. One thing I did when I was the visitor host in my group is, your job is to follow up with visitors. I also followed up with the substitutes and said, hey, are you interested in coming in as a member? And most of them said, no, I was just here to substitute, and that's fine. But I would give them our roster, and they would come back as customers because they saw the meeting, they saw everyone is kind of accountable to each other, and they thought, all right, this is something I'm going to do. And we made a lot of extra money from substitutes who were one-time subs who became customers, and that was great.
Yeah, so I think this is, definitely one of those things where there are many situations that we could talk through individually. The goal is to discourage people from consistently showing up at the meeting. I mean, because they don't have any skin in the game either, you guys, and we can't hold them accountable to BNI policy. So if something happens between a longtime sub and a member or something of that nature, we don't have a resolution process. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can approach this. One of the interesting things that we built into a new e-learning on BNI Business Builder is generating referrals through visibility. And in that little e-learning, it has an opportunity for you to make a list of subs, good, better, and best. I mean, if I wake up, with food poisoning and I quickly need a sub, I know I can probably call somebody from another chapter, especially virtually, because they know BNI and they're happy to jump in for me. Or I'm just going to have to take an absence because that's what the absences are for, sudden unplanned events, right? Then it goes down the list of who's a better sub. Maybe somebody in my business or somebody that's a client. The ideal sub is somebody whose classification isn't represented, who can consider becoming part of our chapter, or do business with someone in the chapter or whatever. So it's a great tool to help people take the time to identify potential subs from a good, better, best perspective.
Right. And by the way, I've just been called out by my good friend Anthony, who listed the podcast that I did with Ivan a few years ago, when we had a gigantic substitute problem, where it was like every chapter had like 3 or 4 people who every week showed up and just kind of came in and promoted their business and and did this thing. So we did the podcast with Ivan. We went through it and Ivan's like, I still have more stuff on this. So why don't we keep going? And we did a second one. So you'll see that that podcast is tied to another one on the same topic, because Ivan said it was never the intention for substitutes to be anything other than the person representing the person in the business. And so this is kind of a courtesy that we're talking about. So I don't mind, and this is different from what I said on the podcast, because I was like, we got to stop this problem in Massachusetts. But now that I'm kind of out and about in the core here and seeing people from all around the country, I think I'm a little more open to, all right, this chapter's in great shape. They don't abuse substitutes. So I don't have a problem with it. Right. But I think you have to watch.
Right.
Yeah, I think I would check in with your if you're following something right now, check in with your director and just say, hey, we're thinking of kind of loosening up a little bit, and get their opinion first, of course. We don't want to say that because there's no written policy on this, but I think our substitute program itself is kind of vague for a reason, right? So there's a little bit of gray area. All right,
Definitely.
Let's move on to the next one.
Okay, yep, got to keep it moving.
I love this one. 2 lates equal a 7. How do you feel about that, Gina?
2 lates equals an absence. Yeah. So,
an absence, I meant, yeah.
This was Steve and I talked about this when we were getting ready. We were like, this is going to be fun. But in all actuality, the attendance policy does not state anywhere in it that anything other than an absence equals an absence. And Steve actually said, well, and frankly, Gina, like, which meeting are you going to count me absent for when I was technically present? So this is one of those things that's a coaching opportunity. It's a coaching opportunity. So lateness is an unacceptable behavior. It's disruptive. It creates a lot of challenges, right? And here's the deal, you guys. If our members are missing the open networking, they're missing 16% of the meeting and missing opportunities to schedule one-to-ones and follow up on referrals and leverage that time. So we want to coach this unacceptable behavior through the code of ethics and our core values, right? But we can't roll it up and turn it into an absence, because they're going to get a letter, right? An auto-generated letter from the system that says, this is your second absence. And Steve's going to call me and go, but Gina, I wasn't absent. When was I absent? So
Yeah.
Steve, I mean, what?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, if you're in the room, then you are clearly not absent. You're either late or you're there, right? And so this has always been a tricky thing for people who've always followed this rule, where they would say that. But I would honestly say to them, show me where on the POMS report you're going to mark them off as they weren't there when they were there, right? So there are ways around this. Probation is one way to do it. And I think that if you're doing a probation, and by the way, mini myth here, probation is meant to keep members, not to kick them out, right? So the point of the probation here is if someone is chronically late, to get them back on track, right? And that's the way to do it, not just changing some rules and erasing a record that really should not be, tampered with.
Exactly. So yes. Lots of comments about this being in the power of one. Subs do reduce the attendance score. And again, in Tim's video, he talks about if having a sub is just as valuable as you being there, then maybe you can just stop attending your meeting. Tim's pretty straightforward that way. So anyway, pretty interesting. But yeah, so these things, right? They take on a life of their own, and they become urban myths. So it's just fascinating. And to Steve's point, the goal of probation is to coach a member and re-engage them, right? It's not, again, to shame people or whatever. I mean, life happens, things happen in people's lives and businesses in the spirit of the core value of building relationships and givers gain. We need to care enough about people to help them, right? Help them with whatever they need to get back on track.
Right. And so Carrie's talking about membership committee should handle it through the coaching and the code of ethics. I think that's a simple rule. If you're not living up to the code of ethics, the membership committee needs to get you back on track or make a decision, right? So I think that's great.
I don't think that lates are converted in the power of one. I think it's just subs reduce the attendance score. I'm not aware that lateness does. We'll check on that, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't. So
I think that's true. I think it's just the half absence.
Jim says both do, but I don't know about that. Okay, we need to keep going.
We'll look into it. Ahead. All right. Every time I go to the whoever in my chapter, chiropractor, acupuncturist, mechanic, in my chapter, it counts as a referral every time. Oh, well, how do we feel about that one?
I mean, look, this is a challenging one, right? And so if I go to the chiropractor every week for an injury or whatever, it's not a new referral. I mean, I already had the relationship. The chiropractor can report it as closed business, but it isn't a new episode or a new referral or a different referral. The initial one, is my referral when the relationship becomes established. And so we want to try to be clear on this. And Steve and I were talking earlier about the fact that if I game the system and improve my score, did I really win? Like, what's the goal? I mean, somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago, well, I think people fudge their numbers on the power of one a little bit because they don't want to feel bad or they don't want to be that person in the gray. And my thing is, listen, I want to help everybody win. My role as a leader and my job as a coach and as a consultant is to help people win. And so what is keeping them from winning? What's getting between them and the goal? And let's help them solve that problem and not game the system or pass fluff because they need it to check a box.
Right.
We don't want to check a box. We want a victory that is pure and sweet. The sweet smell of victory, right? And Steve, I know you have some thoughts on this too. We talked about it earlier, so I'd love for you to share.
I mean, to me, that's why I put this refer a friend thing here. We do this with members in the chapter. But if you give a referral every time you go to your chiropractor, and you've got 12 referrals at the end of the year, and that's all you did, well, I feel like you've really only passed one referral. But here's the other thing. If you, instead of referring yourself to that chiropractor, you referred your friend or neighbor, and that person went there those 12 times, that wouldn't be 12 referrals. You would never do that and say, oh, my neighbor went to him again and again, right? It's kind of something that's done for those inside tier 1 referrals. And so that's kind of why it makes it a little bit of a myth for me. I think that's one that we should bust and just say, hey, you start a new relationship, that's great. Or if you are referring, on a regular basis to somebody for different reasons, right? For your business, right? Maybe you had, you went to them for one thing, and then suddenly it was another issue, and it's like a new avenue. I suppose that's one way to do it. And one final thing, there is a podcast that Dr. Ivan Meisner does where he says there are some chapters that mark it as if the referral is worth more than $50, they count it as a referral. I don't know. You decide how you want to do that.
Well, because again, I think if you look at it in the grand scheme of things too, and you have 12 referrals to the chiropractor, but the closed business, if you look at it, lowers the average value of your referrals too, right? So I think there's some things to consider there, and we won't be able to litigate all that on this call, right? And we're really just trying to start a conversation
Yeah.
or create a buzz, right?
I think I'm about to create a buzz here, or maybe set off a little bomb, but here we go.
There you go.
BNI only wants us to grow so they can make money, Gina. You know that. What?
Yeah. Okay. So this, here's what I used to very sarcastically joke with people. Listen, if BNI really wanted to make more money, they'd take a percentage of your closed business because it was like $16 billion last year. Okay. But here's the deal. Our goal is to fulfill our mission, which is the brand promise we make to you, our members. And the first 5, 6, 8 words of our mission statement are to help members increase their business. Okay, so the bottom line is the definition of a referral is an opportunity. And if you want more opportunities, you have to get your business in front of more people on a consistent basis and have the opportunity to promote it so they can connect you to referral opportunities. So our mission really is to fulfill that mission by helping you grow your business. So the fact of the matter is that the way to do that is by helping you expand your network. And that's just plain and simple. I mean, I was joking with Steve earlier that actually it would be in our best interest for you to put a new realtor in your chapter every 6 months so BNI could get a new application fee. But that doesn't support the core value of building relationships.
Right.
And I don't want to have a new real estate agent every 6 months.
Well, I will tell you, if BNI really only wanted us to grow so they can make more money, they would allow members to be in multiple chapters.
Yeah, because they can charge an application. Yeah,
you cannot be in more than one
Yeah.
chapter, no matter how hard you try. All right. And let's go to our last myth. Visitors days don't work in this chapter. No, we don't do that. Sorry, not going to happen.
Yeah, we're different. That won't work here.
Yeah, I know that a lot of you, who want to do this, especially newer members who go back to a chapter that's been around for a long time, and they're like, we don't do that in this group. This is something to look at because visitors days work in every chapter if you do everything right, and you get everyone to buy into the fact that if we do this well and have a successful day, we're going to do really well, right? And so I think that for those who are right now thinking about, well, what are we going to do? We're just going to do a BNI game, for the Activate program, and that's okay. But if your chapter is at 15 people, I think you need to do something big to get back to where you need to be.
Yeah, it was interestingly enough on our Southeast director call this morning, we were talking about, the life cycle that a chapter goes through, right? Like you're on the growth trajectory and then it's just all wine and roses and it's Disneyland. And then you've moved to BNI Light because it's kind of like, so in order for us to get back to vibrancy and growth and success for our members, right? And again, Tim Roberts has an amazing podcast, or not podcast, it's a video on BNI Business Builder called Growth is Not the Goal. The goal, ladies and gentlemen, is member success. And member success happens when you increase your business, which is why you became part of BNI, to increase your business. And so using a tool like the Visitor Day is a mechanism that moves you towards your goal. And yeah, you guys are saying visitors days work. They work when you work them properly. Exactly. If I execute the system and I follow the steps and I leverage the support and we actually send out the letters, and everybody does their part, we will have a great turnout. I've seen visitor days with hundreds of people in the room.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've said this many times before. I joined a chapter that was tiny. I think we were 17, and we decided we were going to start following the rules for a change. The chapters have been around for 8 or 10 years at the time. And we built a chapter up to 58 members that was based on 3 consecutive years of great visitors days. 14 people one year, 8 another, and then another 12 or so the following year. And suddenly we were the tiniest chapter to the largest chapter. These things work if you put in the effort. Yeah.
Well, and that's the key word, right? You know, is that you consistently over time, you know, bring the effort. So yes, exactly.
All right, let's jump into Q&A. We've got a bunch of them here. Gina, you ready for some lightning round answers?
Yeah, go for it. And just so you know, I popped out and checked the power of one scoring just to confirm. So it does say you lose half a point for any lates or subs, and that medical leave does not affect. So it does affect your power of one score, but it does not translate to an absence on the Palms report. So
okay, so actually yeah, that's a good point that you're making, and it's related to this question. If you miss up to one, it says if you miss up to one time after being in green all month, does that change you yellow right away or no?
It will not, because it's a 6-month snapshot. And that's the other reason it's a 6-month snapshot, you guys, is because it takes consistent, steady effort to move the scoreboard in these cases. And so we don't want one episode or one event to blow your whole, you know, score because of one small inconsistency. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, Brian says, you know, you also can't control visitors. This is related to thank you for closed business. You can only control invitations. You know, to me that's fair, but at the same time, if you know that within the month your responsibility to the chapter is to bring one visitor, you know, and I haven't brought one in the first 2 weeks, I'm going to step it up, you know. And if there's a case where I don't have a visitor that month, that's okay. You're not going to be, you know, you're not going to drop from green to red because you didn't bring a visitor that month, I should say. And again, as Gina said,
the other thing is,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, is that, you know, it's kind of a classic in Sandler training, we call it a sales cookbook, right? It's a classic formula. It's a numbers game. Like, how many sales calls did I make? How many appointments did I set? How many follow-ups did I do? How many people are in my pipeline? And if I engage in those activities consistently and I follow up, the numbers will come. So it does take a few invitations. You're absolutely right, you know, about that with that situation. That's why we send out 40 letters to a visitor day, because we know that 20 people will say they're coming and 10 will show up and 5 of them will submit an application. So it's definitely a numbers game. No question about that.
All right. So I've got questions from Craig and Jan I'll have you combine for this answer. Okay. I thought non-members were allowed 2 visits as either visitors or subs. And is there a rule of thumb about how many times a sub can be present before they become professional? Is 2 appropriate?
You know, this is interesting because we just did the policy refresh, and originally we took the visitors can visit up to twice, because technically visitors aren't subject to BNI policy. But the IBOA, our International Board of Advisors, who works with us to create policy, said, you know what, even though they're not, we want to create a standard so that we have something to work from. And so I think, again, it's one of those things where we don't want people to abuse the privilege of being able to come and promote their business to our members for free when our members have paid to be in the room. And our members have skin in the game. They are subject to our core values and to our code of ethics. And so a professional sub to me would be somebody who attends, you know, 3, 4, 5 times. A lot of times you guys will see this, a member who doesn't renew, but they show up every week for the next 6 weeks subbing for someone in the chapter, right? Because they want to come promote their business for free or whatever, or they're willing to sub. So I think it's just a coaching opportunity.
Okay, great. So Angela's saying they could speak of their own business during networking, right? Sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. During the open networking. Absolutely.
I mean, members are going to reach out to them specifically to say, what do you do? Yep. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. Let's see. If someone happens, something happens suddenly and you can't attend a meeting due to a medical reason, is there an exception to handle this situation?
So how we coach this one is that the absences exist for sudden unplanned events like food poisoning or something like that. If you are having an extended medical situation that will require you to be out more than 2 weeks in a row, then we would request you work with the membership committee to discuss the possibility for a medical leave at that point. Is that fair, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are some people who will put mark people as M for medical, even though they're only missing 1 week. I think you have to keep in mind that this is a medical leave of absence. It is not just missing one. So to me, it has to be, I would imagine, at least 2 weeks out to give someone medical leave credit.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh boy. What if a regular sub, don't get me started, what if a regular sub is a member of another chapter? Is frequent subbing allowed in that case? No, I think they're the worst subs, people in other chapters, because they're going to bring referrals to they're already in a group. They're going to bring referrals to other people, so they're just going to be there to collect. Now, once in a while, visiting, checking it out, I'm cool with that. Especially now with Zoom. I mean, like I know we have people who are like checking out chapters in other countries. This is a really great opportunity for members to see what's going on all around. But in terms of substituting, another member is the last person I would call.
Yeah, and in that good, better, best video that we did, we put, look, a good sub would be a member from another chapter if you wake up sick or something happens the night before, because we know that you can call on them and they know BNI and they want to help you. They're not ideal because what value does it bring necessarily? So again, we want to get away from dealing in absolutes to say never do this, but think about it. We want to provoke some thought around some of these things today.
All right, so we have back-to-back questions here. Again, how do you handle people leaving early? And Ron asks, does the L in PALM stand for late and leave early?
Yes, so we use the L for both. So if a member is in the habit of either arriving late or leaving early, those things are notated as lates. And that has been a guideline that we have always used.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, because whether you're coming in a few minutes late or you're leaving early, sometimes I think leaving early is worse. But there's a case where people have to go to appointments or whatever, but they should be notifying the membership committee if they know that they're going to leave early.
Yeah, I mean, things come up, but the fact of the matter is that you want to protect the time of your BNI meeting on your calendar every week as if you're meeting with your most valuable client, because you have some really valuable people in the room, and so you want to be there.
Anthony's asking, did the rule change for a visitor that they can only visit twice before having to apply, or does each chapter make their own rule for visitors?
I mean, technically the policy brochure says visitors may visit up to 2 times. I mean, they're obviously not subject to policy because they're not members. This is a coaching opportunity for us to let the visitor host know, Steve, it's good to see you again. I need to let you know that this being your 3rd visit, that unless you're prepared to submit an application to our membership committee for consideration, we're going to request that you refrain from visiting going forward. And I think it's just, you can do it very graciously and diplomatically, you know, and not make people feel like, oh, well, gee, aren't they nice? Because look, we are a word of mouth marketing organization, and I don't care what people tell you, bad PR isn't better than no PR, okay? Or maybe I'm wrong, Steve, you're a PR guy, or a marketing guy, but that's not the word we want on the street. Gee, those BNI people sure are rude. No, boy, they rejected me and I still felt good about it. So
yeah, I know.
You can do it.
There are situations where a real estate seat opens and 15 people apply, and they're going to like, well, this is going to take us a month to figure out. But if you have, one thing that I saw was there were these real estate agents who were coming week after week and developing relationships with people. And then when they finally decided on one person, people were like stunned and alarmed and upset. Why didn't you take this person? They already gave me business. And this is why we limit the number of times you can come. You know, they should see 2 meetings. If it makes sense for them, put in your application. Right?
Yeah. Lots of probation questions here.
Yeah. So do you want to just go over quickly what probation is?
Yeah, I mean, probation is something that we would utilize as a tool. I would say, the ideal probationary period is probably 60 days. I think 90 is too long and 30 is probably too short to allow somebody to, kind of recalibrate a behavior that we would consider something that we want to turn around. And so we might put a member on probation. It says right in the policy brochure that members may be put on probation for, failure to comply with certain things. So I think we want to just let them know, again, it's kind of like putting somebody on a performance improvement plan. If you are a leader or a manager in your company and you want to help them up their game, it's the goal is not to coach them out, it's to coach them up. So we're giving you this time period. We want to help you improve your performance. Here are the things we need to see. Look, you guys have seen me say, D equals E over R. Disappointment equals expectations over reality. So be clear of what you're requesting the change to be during that probationary period, right? We need you to increase your referrals or increase your one-to-ones or whatever, and leverage the membership committee and the mentor coordinator to coach the person through.
Tom asks, after all the members have given their weekly presentation, including the sub giving the members presentation, can the sub give their own 45 seconds along with the visitors?
I mean, I think that's one of those things, again, where the president would normally call on them. And so if the president knows the person is a professional sub, hopefully either the visitor host said something to them at the door, or maybe the president would just not call on them during that portion, which is, acknowledging that they're not going to present. But anybody the president calls on would have an opportunity to present. So it's, again, a delicate balance.
I think it depends on how large your chapter is to allow this. I know there are smaller chapters like, why don't they talk? We're going to get out of here early today. Whereas other chapters have no time at all. I mean, there are some chapters that are down to 30 seconds or even less than that to give their weekly presentation. So if there's no time, the meeting's going to be very tight. So you may not be able to have that kind of luxury. Oh boy, this is a good one. Would a member be considered who refuses to turn on a camera via Zoom or attends a meeting with the camera turned off 90% of the 90-minute meeting? Are they absent? Can you call them absent?
Okay, so we dealt with this one a lot during leadership transition and talked about it. The attendance policy does not say you're absent if your camera's off during a virtual meeting. Okay, so technically the person is there even though they're a ghost at the moment. This is a behavior that we need to coach. This would be an ideal situation to put somebody on probation for, right? Is that, look, now I know there's a couple situations like inside banks where people can't have their camera on, so we need to deal with those appropriately. But these other situations that are inappropriate, we want to coach them. So we would just need to say to the person, in the spirit of the core value of building relationships and, all of that, you're not really, it doesn't appear that you're present in these situations, and we need to coach that behavior. And so we've got the code of ethics and we've got our core values, and those are the tools that we can use to recalibrate that behavior.
Cheryl's asking about what about the mechanic if they fix other parts of your car? This goes back to the is it a referral or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's different than the oil change, right? If I go in for my quarterly oil change or whatever, I mean, that to me wouldn't necessarily be a new referral. But if I go in for a timing belt, and then 8 months later, I need a fuel pump or something, that's a different episode or a different event. But again, I think instead of trying to find ways to split hairs on it, let's go full-blown legitimate so there's no question about it, right? So just throwing that out there as food for thought.
Yeah. For a chapter running amok with submitting referrals for each chiropractic treatment, for example, who is best to lead a redirect of this policy? Good question.
Great question. I think, I would always default to the education moment first, because inside the chapter is much more, the peer-to-peer conversations, I think, can be much more powerful than us coming in and saying, hey, you guys are, this is going on. And so I think I would always try to leverage it that way. I don't know, Steve, if you have a different opinion, but I would start there. And then I would, if you have specific individual instances, the mentor coordinator could clarify, maybe you weren't aware. I mean, we're always going to assume people aren't trying to game the system. They probably just really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if this is a chronic problem that's been around for a long time, it's easy enough for the membership committee during their report to say, here's something that we're looking at. We really want to make sure that all our referrals are legitimate and they're working well. And as Gina said, that might be the next week's education moment, because it's got a little bit of heft to it, coming from the membership committee and then to the education coordinator. I don't like the education coordinator to take on too much of the heavy lifting on that stuff. They're supposed to be, doing networking education, but this is networking education in its way, isn't it? To make sure that the chapter is functioning well and we're not kind of obsessing over these little repeat referrals rather than looking at the bigger picture on how we can really grow our businesses.
Yeah.
Okay, will this one webinar show up in my CEUs automatically for everyone that joined? I wish. For now, we are asking you to give yourself a CEU at the end of these. We are working on this. I spoke with Laura Del Rosso, who is in charge of the BNI Business Builder website, and Gina, I'm sure you can talk on this as well, that this is something that's kind of in the works, but it's not ready yet. To have the two sites connect, kind of talking with Business Builder.
Yeah. All right. I know we're getting close to the top of the hour.
We
Do we have time
we're
for
almost there. We'll do another couple, yeah. Let me scroll down a little bit more. Get some of these. Okay. Are we discouraging members from visiting other chapters? That's a good question. No, but couldn't there be value to the members visiting a BNI chapter if they have anyone in that category? Yeah, I think that's totally fine. The one thing to do is, I always feel like if you're going to another chapter to get business, I would work on the chapter that you're in to get that person in the group so that you have someone in your own chapter that you can work on that relationship with rather than in another group. But you are allowed to look around and visit.
Yeah, and I guess the question becomes, what's the intent, right? I mean, if you keep going back there to visit because you know your classification's not taken, that doesn't appear to be giver's gain. It appears like you're looking for something. And so that it might, again, it's a balancing act. This is a good one. Is an introduction of professionals, BNI member to non-BNI members so they know each other, considered a referral? Now, in my mind, it is, because it could be considered a potential referral partner.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, if I, in my coaching and training business, and someone in my chapter introduced me to another consultant, even though it wasn't a direct business opportunity at that moment, it's a potential referral source, and that's legit. Is that fair, Steve?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I have asked for that in chapters. I want an introduction to this person who does this thing to see if we can start a business relationship, but I don't necessarily, I'm not looking for a referral at this point. I'm looking to grow my network that way. So to me, that would be a great referral for me. I would love that.
Yeah. So Stephanie's saying that she's asked about maternity leave. Ideally, the BNI guideline is that a member is allowed up to 8 weeks for a medical leave. A maternity is considered obviously legitimate medical leave situation, and we coach the chapters that it's eight weeks. A member can take up to 8 weeks for a medical leave, whether it's shoulder surgery, whatever it is, knee surgery, hip replacement, maternity leave.
Yeah. So sorry, Stefan. There, we're not avoiding your question. We're just looking in the Q&A.
I know there's so many in here. Oh my gosh. So Steve, is there a way to save these so we can make sure we get back to everybody?
Yeah, we can save all of these.
Okay, great.
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another question we missed. So is one in a contact sphere the same as is a contact sphere the same as a power partner or a power team? No.
Yeah. So really quickly, a contact sphere exists organically and naturally in the chapter. These are symbiotic professions that have a natural referral opportunity. A power team, it becomes a power team when the individuals commit to meeting together outside of the regular chapter meeting for the purpose of increasing referral velocity. So they're getting together on a consistent basis. They may be doing joint sales calls. They may be doing cross-pollination on referral opportunities. They are helping each other hone their messaging. So it's actually a team of people who meet outside their regular chapter meetings. So those two terms are not synonymous.
All right. I think we can wrap up here.
Okay, yeah, we got a ton of questions.
Time, so sorry.
Stirring up controversy, Steve.
I know, that's our job. Not really. So I think that we'll follow up with those that we can on these questions. And if you don't hear from us or you don't get enough of an answer, we are here for you. Here's our contact info. Please reach out to Gina or to me. And if you have a great idea for Core Talks webinar, please send me an email. Some of our best ideas come from our members, and some of our best presenters are our members. So we'd love to see what you can bring to the table. All right. Thanks all for being on. Gina, this was great. A lot of fun, a lot of controversy. This is my favorite kind of webinars.
Fun's one of my personal core values. So thanks for entertaining me today, Steve. I appreciate it. And thanks you guys for being here. Thanks for the amazingly insightful questions and comments, and for people posting good stuff in the chat and links in the chat. I know Corey posted the BNI welcome. I think you can access the policies there. We have a whole series coming out on BNI Business Builder on the new refreshed policies, a little mini micro learning on each one. So
yeah,
stay
good stuff. Okay, thanks, Gina.
Thanks, Steve.